And the suspect in the Buffalo supermarket mass shooting is expected to plead guilty today to state charges. He's the first person in state history to be charged with domestic terrorism motivated by hate after allegedly killing 10 black people and wounding several others in what police call a racially motivated attack. He also faces 10 counts of first-degree murder, 10 counts of second-degree murder, 3 counts of attempted murder as a hate crime, and 1 count of criminal possession of a weapon. Let's bring in senior investigative reporter Aaron Katursky and host and legal analyst at Law and Crime Network, Terry Austin, for more on this. Aaron, this new charge of domestic terrorism motivated by hate, it was adopted in 2020 in response to the El Paso mass shooting. What can you tell us about this statute, and how does it impact this case? For example, his sentencing if he does plead guilty. It's
an automatic life sentence. So if his guilty plea includes this part of the indictment, domestic terror motivated by hate, it would automatically trigger a life sentence. This statute, as you say, Diane, was imposed after the Walmart shooting in El Paso, Texas, which was motivated by anti-Hispanic animus. And we've seen recent examples in the country of racially, ethnically, or sexual orientation motivated mass shootings. Colorado Springs, anti-gay animus there. And the law in New York was named for a Jewish man who was stabbed at Hanukkah, north of New York City in Rockland County. Anti-Semitic motivation there. And so it really does speak to the moment we're in. In this particular attack back in May, police and prosecutors said Peyton Gendron had hate in his mind when he didn't attack in his own community, but drove to somewhere in western New York where he thought he could find a high concentration of black people, and found a supermarket, killed 10 black people, and was looking for more. And I know you talk to law enforcement sources all the time. Are they seeing a rise in these kinds of hate crimes in general? There is a real fear that law enforcement has about copycats after any one of these, and that's why they really try to put statutes like this in place so that people understand there are going to be more severe consequences for carrying out something based on what's in your head. And these kinds of thoughts back in the day may have been isolated to somebody's basement, but on social media they find community, and that's where law enforcement says it becomes quite dangerous. Yeah, now, Terry, this suspect in this Buffalo case previously pleaded not guilty. Now he's expected to plead guilty to all 25 counts and maybe waive his right to an appeal. Why make that change?
You know, I think he's trying to avoid the death penalty in the federal case. This is the state case where he's decided to now apparently plead guilty, and we'll see what happens this morning. But I do think that he probably had a conversation with his attorneys, and that conversation probably said something like, look, you are also facing these federal charges, and if the DOJ decides to bring those charges, you could get life. Even though we have not seen that death penalty enacted in years, we do think that there is that possibility. So I think he probably changed his mind from that original not guilty plea to this now guilty plea, and it could be on all of the charges. And I want to bring in our correspondent, Stephanie Ramos, who's there outside the courtroom. Stephanie, what's the scene like as people await this potential plea?
Well, Diane, we were here when that shooting at the Top supermarket happened in Buffalo back in May, and being here now, so many months later, that incident is clearly a vivid memory in this community. There are Top's supermarket employees inside the courtroom. There's also an overflow room for families of the victims. So this is a community that knew this was happening today. This court hearing was actually supposed to happen last week, but was delayed because of the snowstorm. But the community has come together, and they are here this morning inside that court hearing, which is about to get underway any minute now. We're going to head inside soon to see what takes place. We know that the suspect, Peyton Gendron, is expected to plead guilty to state charges, which is very new here in the state of New York. Diane.
Aaron, he's also facing federal charges, as Terry mentioned. So what's the latest in that case? And there, the Attorney General said it was an obvious case for federal hate crimes charges, which is what he's charged with. And as Terry notes, he does face the possibility of the death penalty. And so it may be that his lawyers want to focus on that case, which is still in its early stages. Even though the attack happened back in May, a federal death penalty case takes quite a long time. So that case is just
really beginning. But it is going to force the community, even with this anticipated guilty plea to the state case, it is going to force the community and the victims to relive all of the horror and all of the evidence once that case potentially goes to trial.
So, Terry, if he pleads guilty to the state charges today, what happens next?
Well, if he pleads guilty to this, we'll have a sentencing next, and we'll see exactly what happens with that sentencing. I mean, there is the life imprisonment without parole, but they have to technically go through those phases. They'll listen to impact statements, and the judge will determine whether or not to impose parole or no parole here. You know, if he gets the maximum, they'll look at the guidelines and determine whether or not he is going to get that maximum. So, he's pleading guilty, it looks like, we'll see, to all of the counts, and that top count does carry a very heavy sentence. And after that, we'll determine whether or not he's going to spend the rest of his life in jail.
Stephanie, what's the reaction been in Buffalo so far to this? What would this expected guilty plea mean to the survivors in the community there if it does happen?
Well, they want justice. That's what we've heard from a lot of folks in this community back in May and today, since we've spoken to them. They want justice. They want this man to be held accountable for the lives that were lost at that supermarket several months ago. 10 people were lost, were shot and killed. And I mean, I remember speaking with so many families months ago, and spoke with one family recently where they said that they lost someone so special for them. And now that the holidays are approaching, and now that this court hearing is happening today, it's all just the memories of that day are just coming back to them. And they want this suspect to be held accountable, and they said they're going to stick it out as long as they can to see that happen here.
All right, Stephanie Ramos in Buffalo, Aaron Gatursky, Terry Austin, thank you all.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.